Hello, I would like to tell you the story of the three sisters. High in the mountains, in a place far from here, a storm was brewing. The winds were whirling and cold, the snow and hail followed, bringing destruction in its wake. The mother, Ciara, was watching her family and wanted to make her presence known. On the windswept slopes of Mount Snowdon, three sisters met to discuss the weighty problem of what was the best way to the sea. For, being water spirits, they were fond of the oceans. First, decided to take the direct route and headed westward. She became the River Dee and was the first to mingle with salty waters. The second sister had a taste for landscape and made her way through purple hills and golden valleys. Her name was Elwy. She wanted to ensure that her sisters were safe, but was easily angry and could not listen to their endless ramblings, so found a quiet place to rest. The remaining sister, Alyn, decided against shortcuts and took a route far-reaching to see all the best views on her way to the sea. The Dee, it appears, wished to visit all the fairest cities of the kingdom and never stray far from the haunts of men. Our story begins long ago. One glorious morning, as the sun cast its first light of the day upon the grassy valleys below, and the birds soared in spirals through the calm summer breeze, Snowdon couldn't help but think there was something missing. Settled upon the highest point of Wales, he could see for miles and miles across the beautiful landscapes beneath him. Everything seemed perfect, and then it dawned on him. There was no life flowing through his veins, not a river or water in sight. Snowdon pondered long and hard about how he could bring flowing waters to his beloved valleys, but he could not find his answer. Years went by as he searched for the solution, and his eyes filled with sadness at what seemed an unfathomable task. He felt helpless and put his head in his hands for a little while, contemplating what he should do next. As he raised his head, almost fully composed, he blinked, and with that, three giant teardrops spilled from his eyes, splashing directly into his two palms. What happened next was quite extraordinary. Snowdon stared at the drops of moisture that had settled into small puddles, cradled in the palms of his hands. Wearily, he slowly began opening his fingers up, wide enough to allow the tears to trickle to the ground. Just seconds after the water had landed, large puddles started to form. 3, to be precise. The puddles got larger and deeper, muddier and boggier. He stared at the 3 pools in front of him, bewildered at how his eyes had created such masterpieces. At that moment, Snowdon understood his fate. He was the source of water. He just hadn't known it. Snowdon made the decision to nourish and care for these water sources, with the hope that one day they would venture from the mountain in the form of rivers and add a splash of life to his beloved land. He claimed the magically formed pools as his offspring and named them Dee, Elwy and Alyn, 3 water spirits. The daughters brought such joy to their father during their lifetime. But eventually the day came when Snowdon knew that it was time for them to flee the hills and create their path to the sea. But suddenly it dawned on him. The pools that Snowdon's daughters had grown from were drying up, and overjoyed by his daughter's existence, Snowdon found he had no tears left to cry. There was simply not enough water to form the rivers. He had to think fast. He gathered the last bit of water in his hand and sat upon his rock. For many days and many nights the doting father worked tirelessly with a needle and thread, looping and weaving and pulling at the droplets of water until finally he collapsed into a heap, 3 shimmering bundles in his arms. Snowdon beckoned his daughters and asked them the question they had been longing to hear. "My daughters, the time has come for you to join the sea. What is your path?" One by one, he presented his daughters with their cloaks, gently placing each one over their heads and tying a delicate knot under their chins. Armed with these water cloaks, you will curate your own paths and fulfill your destiny. Your destiny as water spirits. How will you make that journey? Bursting with glee, Dee, the boldest and most fearless water spirit of the 3, answered first. "Father, I have been longing to reach the sea, to smell the salty air for so long. I will head west and use the shortest route possible to meet the wide waters." With a proud nod of approval from Snowdon, Dee shot forth from the mountain, gathering pace as her cloak billowed behind her, forming a fresh stream of water. She weaved in and out of the rugged landscapes, meeting rich wildlife on her way before reaching the coast, settling in a little town. Dee and Alyn, who were both argumentative sisters, could not best decide their place to meet. Next up to fulfill their destiny was Elwy, who was elated at the thought of the fair folk she would encounter on her journey. Elwy said, "I will not rush to the shore. I wish to take the long route to the sea. For many years I have yearned to experience Welsh charm and to wander the people's great cities, beautiful towns and quaint villages, and to learn their ways. On my journey, I will water the meadows of the people and nourish their land." Her father embraced her and told her that they would meet again, as they said she would. Elwy took her time, gliding through towns and villages, learning the ways of her people, before she and her cloak eventually flowed into the sea. Lastly, having watched her 2 older sisters burst from the mountaintop, curating silver streams in their paths, Alyn stepped forward. "While Dee is wild and Elwy seeks culture, I intend to seek beauty and tranquility by meandering through lush countryside, woodland and forest to make harmony with nature. Creatures will thrive as I flow through the purple hills and golden valleys, curating sanctuaries for them along the way. Wildlife may wander with me, swimming in my path to the sea." Snowdon kissed his daughter upon her forehead and said goodbye. She turned, a pool of water forming behind her, as she began her journey down the mountainside. She flowed for miles at one with nature before reuniting with her sisters. They recounted their magical adventures and epic experiences through the fair land of Wales. Satisfied that he'd raised his 3 daughters with such unique and admirable qualities, but saddened that they had fled, the mighty Snowdon let out a heavy sigh, which trembled through the towns below him. Ciara's attention on the sisters made Elwy protective and furious towards the lands of man, and burst its banks to test us. Snowdon wondered when they would return to repeat their water cycles again, and questioned Elwy's judgment. He sent for the sun to shine through the storm clouds, and the largest rainbow shone down across the sky and brought the sisters together until the end of time. Thank you very much.